to the garage. Today I've got my 1981 Piaggio Ciao. I've probably spent about 10 times what it costs on some random upgrades and mods. So I thought it'd be cool to take a look at what I've done to it. I also ordered some parts a few months ago, but I've forgotten what's in there, so we'll open that and maybe fit some things. Let's take a closer look. Let's begin with the stuff that you can see, which is this honking big exhaust. This was the factory exhaust. This is a two-stroke bike, so this is called an expansion chamber. The way that two-strokes engine works is when the exhaust comes into the exhaust pipe, there's a back pressure that helps force more air to get higher air pressure into the cylinder before combustion. This expansion chamber is designed such that when the exhaust from the previous stroke comes out the back, it reflects off the end of the expansion chamber and supercharges the air into the cylinder. So that's pretty, it's looking all rusty now. That was one of the first things I did. These have like a resonance frequency they run at, so at the higher RPM you get the rebound times up better with the rotation of the engine. So this actually loses quite a lot of power down low, and then up in the higher rev range, which I have no idea what actual RPM this thing runs at, you get like double the power, and then down low it's just completely flat, it loses all the power. But you don't want to be spending too much time down low anyway. The other side effect, or maybe a main effect, is this exhaust muffler is full of cardboard or something. It's really quiet, probably quite restrictive, and this one has, it's not horribly loud, but definitely much louder than the factory one. Less restricted, I'd imagine. Yeah, and the other obvious change is these side panels, which I'll get to in a second. The factory ones look a lot nicer, for sure. They match the colour of the bike. However, another mod I've done is to convert this from single speed to a variated gearbox. And right here is where that's an issue with these factory guards. I'll pull you in to have a look at that. Okay, we're in a bit closer here. You can see I've just pulled off the guard. Here's the factory one at the end of it, and the aftermarket one has a nice big extrusion there for this. This is, it's got some weights in it. This is the Variator, and the idea being the faster it spins, there's a centrifugal effect where this pulley at the back changes diameter. So I can't really pull it, but there's a spring that forces the pulley closed. So here's another pulley, and as it speeds up, the centrifugal force pulls the two sides of the pulley apart, effectively making it a smaller pulley. So as the pulley's at its resting distance, the pulley diameter will be about that, and then as the bike speeds up, the pulley opens, and then the belt rides tighter and tighter on the pulley, changing the ratio. So the higher you go, the smaller the back pulley gets, and there's a spring on the front pulley. So then as that tightens, or loosens the belt rather, this one is free to tighten, and then the diameter of the front one rises, and then the Variator allows the bike to stay at where the peak power is, the power band. This is tuned, I would say, just so that the power band is right on where the Variator variates, if that's how you say that. So as you speed up, once you get into the power band, that's when it starts to engage, and it will change gears all the way up to where the where this maxes out, and then the bike's out of the power band at that point at about 50 kilometers an hour. These bikes were never made with a variated gearbox. They were single speed from factory. So this pulley I showed earlier is actually the original rear pulley on this bike, and then the front pulley, centrifugal clutch. This is the factory one here, which has the fixed pulley, but otherwise is quite similar to this. This is off of a Piaggio Bravo, which is like a similar era to this bike, but with rear suspension and a gearbox. So I bought that off eBay, likely secondhand. The way these bikes start from a standing start is that there's a centrifugal clutch in this part here. And this is the one on the original bike, so it looks somewhat similar. As the engine spins, this inner internal piece with the clutch pads on it, you can see here these clutch pads, they're just like a brake disc, but they run on the inside of this this housing here. As the engine spins faster, if it spins fast enough, these springs will be overcome by the force, centrifugal force on the clutch pads. They'll hit there and they'll take off. Interestingly, there's a second set of centrifugal clutch pads. These are attached to the pulley housing. So in order to start the bike, you can start it by pedaling, which will turn the rear wheel, and then the belt will turn the housing, and then these will engage and cause these to be mechanically coupled, and that will kick-start the engine. The reason I'm talking about all of that is because I've modified this one. These bikes are quite lazy off the line, or at least lazy by my standards. The clutch engages at really low speeds, really low engine speeds, and because of the expansion chamber, there's not much power at low speeds. So the bike engages, it sort of slowly takes off, and then you have to wait for you to get up to a high enough speed before the power band kicks in and the bike takes off. So you can buy these sets of clutch weights. So these let you tune the weight inside the clutch. The heavier the weight is, the faster it will, the sooner it will engage. And the lighter the weight, the higher the RPM needs to be before it engages. So there's a whole array of clutch weights. They go inside these plastic things here. It looks a little bit different than this design. However, in order to get the clutch to engage exactly when the power band on the expansion chamber kicks in, these aren't even light enough. So I ended up cutting the tip of a steel nail and just putting it in these plastic things with some silicone. So this has lower than the aftermarket options I could find in order to get the clutch to engage right as the power band's kicking in to get the bike off the line as fast as possible. The other thing that had to change with the variated gearbox is this rear hub. There's a bunch of gears inside here that convert the speed of the belt and then convert it down quite substantially before the power gets to the rear wheel. So this is the factory one. The ratio's a little bit different than this one off the Bravo. And you can see the rear brake is inside the hub there. That's the shoe. And there's also an engage piece here, which you can use to disengage the engine from the rear wheel if you want to go into pedal only mode for some reason. It's a total dog to pedal, but you can do that if it breaks down. You can convert it to a bike. Let's take a little look at the engine. One screw takes that off, and you can see that sitting in here. And here's the flywheel, just barely poking in there. You can see the little fan blades on there to help cool it down. In the back here we have the carburetor. That's the choke right there. This is an aftermarket one, so this is the factory one here. Tiny little thing. You can see the fuel comes in this line on the side, comes down to the float bowl. This is the hole here where the air comes through, the air filter And that little brass, if you can make that out, is the needle, and the Venturi effect causes low pressure in here as the air rushes through, and that sucks the fuel out of the float bowl. This aftermarket carburetor is a 13mm hole as opposed to a 10mm, so that helps it flow more. And it mounts like on the side onto the engine, so I've had to drill out the hole that goes into the back of the crankcase where the fuel comes into the engine. I think I've drilled that up to 14mm because that was as big as I could go before the wall thickness was getting a bit low. These engines, like a more modern two-stroke, will have what's called a reed valve, where each cycle, when the air comes in, it gets sucked into the crankcase through the low pressure. As the cylinder rises, the crankcase volume expands, and that causes the low pressure that pulls the air through the engine. These have a rotary valve, so the counterbalance on the crankshaft it's designed such that the hole the carburetor is attached to, where the air comes in to the crankcase, is blocked off by the counterbalance. And so as the engine turns around, this counterbalance, that's the whole of the carburetor, like the counterbalance sort of comes back, just perfectly timed for each stroke. And as it comes back and blocks it off and lets it out, then the air can flow through. Excuse the hand signals. The timing, I've adjusted it slightly, so I've taken a Dremel to the crankshaft, a little cap. I've added about 5mm extra timing so that the fuel at the higher RPMs, there's an effect called a pumping loss, where as the revs of the two-stroke engine get too high, the energy required to to suck the air in and the timing, it starts to take more energy to do a revolution than you get from combustion. And so changing the timing helps to increase the RPM, so that probably got an extra like 3 kilometers an hour out of the bike, nothing crazy. But yeah, as you can tell at this point, everything on this bike's been done to maximize RPM and power at the RPM. Might also talk about the head as well at this point. It's also been changed. Mechanically, I've just realized there's nothing original on this bike anymore. I mean, the crankcase is original, but it's been modified, new carb. This is the original head, and obviously the drivetrain, it's all been replaced. So this is the factory head. It is 49 or 47.97 cc's, I think is what it says officially. 49.28 cc's, that's what it says. This one here is the piston there. And the main thing that's interesting on two-stroke heads is the ports. So there's holes in the side of the head where the exhaust gases and the fuel coming in from the crankcase. And where these are positioned on the cylinder walls is quite important for timing. The one I've replaced it with is still 50 cc's, but you can get them in 65 cc's. Obviously in New Zealand where I am based, 50 cc's is the max. This has got what they call an extra boost port. So the hole in the cylinder wall, there's an extra one which is a bit higher, and it allows at higher RPMs a bit more air flow to happen, supposedly. I'm not an expert on that stuff, but it seems to have a lot more power. There we go. Cool. So that was a quick look at some of the stuff I've done with the bike. Definitely still 50cc, totally not 65cc at the moment. Yeah, when I first got this, I lived up the top of a hill I would say probably about 20 kilometers an hour was the max speed up the hill. It just sort of managed to get up, but he had to have a running start with some pace from the bottom of the hill. After all these changes, I think they're supposed to be design limited to 50 k's, right? I think this can probably go about 55 along the flat. And it can do that up that same hill. If I was to, like the hills were so steep you can't really run up it, you kind of got to walk up it. So e-bikes and stuff, people would shoot up, but on a push bike, you're going walking pace. That's sort of how steep the hill is. I live on the flat now. This thing is geared probably too aggressively, like it gets up to 55, its max speed much faster than it needs to. You can tweak like the distances of those pulleys that I showed in the back to sort of change how aggressive the gearing is. Just the tension of the belt will let you increase the top speed but decrease the acceleration. But for now, it's quite fun. If I move them closer together, it is enough to do a little wheelie sometimes, which is a bit dangerous, feels a bit dodgy on a bike. This little kind of just goes, there's no suspension or anything. Cool, so this is a JMPB website. Everything I've had to buy for this has been online. There's a few suppliers in Italy. It seems to be quite a cool modding community. This is this expansion chamber. Is definitely aftermarket for this. I believe the carburetor, they probably make those for some other bike. But the head with the changed ports, that all stuff's definitely not factory. So it's pretty cool. So this website's great. Living in New Zealand, I often have to pay twice. You got to pay the price for all the parts, and then the shipping is usually about the same. So let's have a look. Cool. Right, we've got looks like a petcock and a fuel cap. Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, I lost the fuel cap on the bike, so I've been using this shitty rubber thing. This fuel cap looks like it has a dipstick, so you actually know how much fuel you have. So it'll be awesome. This is pre-mix as well, so it even says the 2% oil. That's a 1:50 ratio of two-stroke mix when you fill this thing up. That'll be nice because at the moment I have no idea how much fuel's in the thing, and I could just run out at any moment, so I like to keep it quite topped up. This is a replacement petcock. This is the switch at the bottom of the fuel tank that controls if fuel's going to flow into the carburetor or not. It's got it's a three-way switch, so there's off in the middle, and then there's normal operation, on, and then you turn it back towards yourself to put it into reserve. The reserve's currently also broken on my petcock, so if I have it on reserve or on, it's just always effectively on reserve. Idea being, when you run out of fuel on the on mode, you turn the reserve to get a little bit of extra petrol. So when you turn on reserve, hey, it's time to go fill up. So yeah, these combined means I should never get stuck anywhere running out of fuel. I may have got carried away. It looks like I bought a little model off the bike. Shipping's so expensive, It would have cost the same shipping if I just bought that. So why not get a little model bike to put in the cabinet somewhere? Cool. Let's flip the bike around and I'll fit these. Cool, so here's the petcock currently, and there's the line that feeds down to the carburetor. Yeah, so that'll be running. Oh, is that closed? C for closed, that's running, and then that's reserve, I believe. Cool, let's get a jerry can. I've got a jerry can and a funnel that's slightly older than I am. Should still do the job though. A little bit out of the carb there. I was getting a bit bored holding that there. So let's flip it around. I'll pry the other end of the hose off the carb. Hoping that it'll be easy to get back on. that. I'll put it through the filter. Feed that straight in there. Cool. See you in 10. Actually, while we wait for it to drain, let's fit the new cap. So the old cap, I must have just fallen out while I was riding it one day, and I bought this totally inappropriate bit of rubber. It's actually got a hole in it. These are supposed to be temporary if you lose your gas cap. It was temporary for a couple of years, and I had to cut it so I could sort of jimmy in under there. So let's hope this replacement one fits well. It's got an O-ring. Yeah, fingers crossed. Oh, lovely, much better. I'll put that up the right way so you can read oil 2%. Nice and clear. Right, that's still dribbling out really slowly. I'm sure if I had tipped the bike around, it would get a bit more. I've got it set to reserve, so hopefully the vast majority is out. So let's open this. Cool. It's a nice and shiny new one. You can see there's a sort of fuel filter area there and up the top. My guess is that when you have it open, only the top one opens, and that allows the fuel in the tank level to go. This is a 2.2 litre tank, allows it to come all the way down to here, and then when you go to reserve, these bottom ones will open as well, which will let you use up all the rest of it, save for, looks like there's about 10 mil of clearance. It's like a 14 mil. I'm sure more fuel will spill out of this as soon as I take this off. Yeah, that's not too much though. Pretty dry actually. Cool. There's the old one, all gunked up. I assume there's something wrong with the switch in there as to why it's always sort of stuck on reserve. But I guess that goes that way, looking at the old one. And there's a thread on both sides of that nut, so I think I'll slide it in. The tank's probably filthy, but I don't think I'm going to be bothered cleaning that out. Try to get it lined up so the tube's kind of going in line with the fuel cylinder. Nice and tight, careful not to over tighten. Let's see if I made a mistake pulling this off the carb. Oh no, it went on nice and easily. This hose is also aftermarket. I pinched the old one, I'm sure it was probably perished, and leaked out a whole bunch of fuel in someone's garage one day. This is just off some from the parts store. Cool, well I'll put it back together and fill it up, and then let's go start it up, see if it runs. Oh. Topped off. Cool. That's topped off with some not that fresh fuel. I haven't ridden this thing in a while. That's been premixed for as long as I can remember. I've got another two-stroke bike and I ride even less. So we'll see if we can start it up. It maybe a bit of a struggle when it's cold, especially if the fuel's old, but we'll see if I can't get this thing to life. It's usually easier to crash start this by pedaling and driving, especially when it's cold. On the choke, it takes maybe about 10-15 meters of it driving while it's bogging, and then after that it's fine. It'll start up with a single kick. I'll try to do it from cold just so you can see how awkward it is. Yeah, I also mentioned briefly, oh yeah, you might have noticed there's a bike lock on here. This thing doesn't have a key. There's a key to lock the front wheel. I don't have it, but that's kind of useless because the thing only weighs like 40 kgs. You could pick it up and run away with it, but there's no ignition start. There's like, as far as I know, there's like 2 wires in the bike. There's one that goes to the red tail light and the headlight, and maybe if you would count the ignition system, there's like 1 wire for the spark plug, 1 to the coil, 1 to the spark plug, I guess. So maybe this bike has 4 wires, we'll say. Yeah, I've just topped it up. Let's give it a go. So yeah, starting procedure, we'll do open. So I've pulled the petcock down as I showed before. I'll just push this button in that engages the choke. When you pull the throttle all the way out, it automatically pops the choke. So you just pop it in, and once it's off and driving and you go fully open, it'll reset the choke for you. Cool. The other thing you need to make sure is that this button I mentioned before is disengaged, so that as you turn the pedals, there's a chain that will drive the wheel. So I need to lean forward and make sure the wheel's off the ground. Then the pulley will engage, and that will drive the front pulley, which will drive the engine and hopefully start it. There's also a switch up on the handlebars here. That runs a cable to the top of the cylinder, which opens a valve in the top of the cylinder. So the idea being, you push this in, the cylinder is open to the atmosphere while that's being pushed in. You then pedal it, the engine will start to turn over, and then you dump this or let go. That will close the valve on the top of the cylinder, and that will mean there's compression in here, and hopefully fuel's come through as you've been pedaling. The piston going up and down will activate the carburetor and get fuel into the system. So cool. So when it's cold, when it's hot rather, you can usually just start it as simple as this, and that'll just spring to life, as easy as that. When it's cold, however, it looks more like this. If I engage the front brakes like that, the suspension will keep the bike sort of leaning forwards. Let go of the rear brake, push the compression switch in, and see the back pedal. This pedal then lets the back wheels go. Hear the engine turning over, so I'll do that a bit and then dump the lever. Stop the bike similarly the way you started it, by pushing the lever in, which means there's no compression anymore and the bike stops. I've stripped jacket, got my helmet, some gloves. I'll go find a backpack for the camera, and then let's go find somewhere that I can do some drive-bys so you can see what it looks like. Someone 6'2" riding a bike less than half their weight. Let's go. We've just come up into the hills for a bit of a ride. I only stopped once to get some shots in. It was a bit of admin just by myself. We're up into altitude. I'll cut to a little scene of how high up we are. Bike got probably warmer than it's been ever. A little good workout for it. Yeah, hope you enjoyed the Piaggio. I'll see you next time.